Hello and welcome to the Long Talk here on New Zealand Sports Radio. And we have yet another international star to chat to today. He has been ranked #1 in the world in windsurfing and has also represented New Zealand at the Olympics, as well as coached many people as well, which is going to be a fantastic journey that we're going to talk about because it's taken him around the world by the looks of things. Welcome onto the show, JP Tobin. How are you doing, sir?
Very well. A bit of a nippy morning, but we've got some sun, so can't complain.
Yeah, well, you've got yourself a nice puffered coat on there, so you're all nice, wrapped up and warm. So you'll be fine.
Yes.
So, what was your first sporting experience or sporting memory?
Sporting memories. Well, actually, it would probably be back in the days when I was in a Hopi Beach. So we had the Hopi Beach little football team there. So the Hopi Blues. So we actually managed to win the Eastern Bay Conference way back in the day. But that was really before I became more, I guess, individual sport focused when windsurfing really took over. But probably the first early memories were the team days with the Hopi Blues.
So you started off as footballers in soccer rather than rugby, unlike a lot of Kiwi kids.
Yeah, it was just kind of the theme that was at the beach. I mean, it was more football orientated or soccer orientated. So our local parks were there was no uprights, so I guess we just went with the flow.
Oh, cool! It makes a bit different because a lot of the stories start off with barefoot 5-year-old full contact rugby and watching the All Blacks at 3 o'clock in the morning with dad.
Yeah.
So you took a different route in, which is great. So obviously on the beach, I guess being in the water was something you did a lot. And I guess did you start off straight away into windsurfing, or did you do a bit of surfing? Did you do a bit of canoeing, bit of other type of yachting? Did you mix it all up, or was it straight into windsurfing?
Interestingly enough, straight into windsurfing. I mean, I was a bit of a black sheep in that respect because everybody else was surfing at the beach, and surfing for me only really came along at a later date. So I was caught by the wind, I guess, at that point. Windsurfing captured all my imagination. It was an odd scenario with all my buddies because they were all surfing, and I was the windsurfer. So surfing now though. So yeah.
Oh, so you surf now. You say a bit of kite surfing as well, or
not so much kiting. I've everything's kind of more gearing towards the foils now. So a lot of foil surfing, and now my latest addiction, I guess you could say, is with the wing. These little inflatable hand wings, which just give you just enough power to get up on the foil. So in a lot of respects, it's just coming back to that simplicity, trying to find the simplest way to enjoy the ocean.
And it's about enjoyment now. You're not, or are you still competing, and still got those competitive juices going?
Still competing in everything. If it's not against somebody else, it'd be against myself. So it's trying to learn new moves, or at the moment, windfoiling is coming on stream pretty strong for the next games, 2024. So the current Olympic class that I've been competitive for most of my career is actually evolving, but works for me because that's actually what has brought me back into the windsurfing or the windfoiling side of things. So and now trying to actually bring a new crop of New Zealand windsurfers or windfoilers up to speed.
Well, it's so that you're working with a group, and there's some support and coaching there. During when you were progressing through the ranks, were there, and did you have those sort of coaching groups, or was it much more, you say, individually? Was it about you? Did you have to be self-motivated a lot more, or were there coaching pathways and high performance pathways for you?
No, very much more self-motivated. So, but I guess at that point in time, I was very lucky in that I was following in the footsteps of giants. So with Bruce Kendall, Aaron McIntosh, Barbara Kendall. So it was at a time when New Zealand windsurfing was very, very strong, and I was just following along on the tail end of that. Windsurfing has taken a little bit of a hiatus over the last few years, let's say. And now with windfoiling, and suddenly we have a a new group of young guys and girls who are like me, captured by this new form of flying across the ocean, but on a windsurfer.
And we had a very quick chat last week. You said this is the way that a lot of these, a lot of the sailing classes are going. I mean, obviously we've seen it in the America's Cup at the top end, in the kind of, I guess, the Formula One style of is where a lot of us have seen it. But a lot of the smaller categories now, it's much the foiling is very accessible to your normal sailors.
Yeah, but I think it's just it's more than that. It's creating I mean, ultimately, it just boils down to just enjoying what you do. So I think what the foiling does, it just I don't know quite what it is. Like I would probably be at a point in my career that had done so much windsurfing by that point that I probably never would have windsurfed again. But suddenly I made this decision to order this foil. I actually forgot about it, and then suddenly when it arrived, the shop rang me and said, "Your foil's arrived," and I didn't really recall that I'd ordered this thing, but I'm glad I did. And then suddenly we've had a lot of the other Aaron McIntosh is coming back in, and it's like we're finding the reasons why we started windsurfing all over again. And it's, I guess, for the younger generation as well. It's providing that sport that they purely enjoy. So after training, they'll keep sailing. So and that's the beauty of it.
And obviously, from the outside looking in, it's space age. It looks exciting, and it might become the norm. But for now, it feels a bit Red Bull cutting edge, kind of extreme, as well. I think will also appeal to people.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. It's like we're living in the future, really. When you're jumping on the foil, it blows my mind every time that this is actually something that works, and is actually, as the equipment is progressing, it's becoming quite accessible and quite easy.
So you're obviously you're back here now, in New Zealand, but when you were competing, you got to travel around the globe. Was that part of the appeal? Was the travel and going to Europe and going to these exotic locations to do it, or was it purely I want to be the best, I want to compete? What was kind of your drivers?
Funnily enough, I actually just want to be at home. I'm my happiest when I'm in New Zealand. So I mean, if I could have everybody come and compete here, then that would be my first choice. But I mean, the reality is, the centre of the sport is Europe for a lot of different sports as well. So that became the driver, and you had to leave. You had to leave to go and compete. So the competition side was definitely the driver in that respect. Otherwise, I would have been quite happy just to go on and just keep sailing in New Zealand. Even during winter. So competition in that respect just became the primary driver to get out there. And having said that, the experience of traveling and for extended periods of time in Europe is incredible. I mean, what an amazing opportunity to see so many different places. But it all comes back to the fact is that New Zealand's where it's at. For me personally, and so it's always nice to come home.
So I've been talking to various beach volleyball people, and they're saying how they've had to do things like drive across the continent at the last minute when they've heard there's a space in a tournament, to go and to suddenly go and enter, and they'll literally drive overnight, arrive the morning of the tournament, and to try and get themselves into getting qualifying points and things like that. Did you have those sort of issues when you were traveling around Europe, or was it, or did you have or was it planned out? You knew where you were going to be. It was organised, or was it ad hoc and suddenly throw the board on top of the car and off we go, folks? There's some wind over there. The race is on, kind of style.
No, typically the competition schedule is planned out, so you arrive into Europe at a certain time. But having said that, we travel with a mountain of equipment, so there's no flying across Europe. So typically there's a competition a month in Europe or two, and you try and fit as many as other ones as you can, like small national championships and other bits and pieces, just to make your time there more full. But yeah, no, primarily you know your schedule, but you're also traveling across Europe with mountains of equipment on cars and full of smelly sailors. So yeah, there's lots of that kind of road tripping stuff. And I guess in that respect as well, you get to see a lot more of these countries.
Now, I was talking with an international windsurfer, he said he leaves a couple of boards in Hawaii because he knows he's always back there. Did you end up leaving equipment in Europe, or did you have to ship it back with the boards all the time?
Well, because we do so much testing, even though the equipment is all technically one design, we do a lot of testing at home. So ideally, if you're in a scenario where you can have a couple of boards left in Europe, that's a great position to be in. But this kit's not that cheap, so it often boils down to the fact that you just you train with the stuff and then you have a race set which you travel with. So the whole airline the balancing act of getting that kind of equipment across became quite challenging, and progressively more so. But yeah, technically, I mean that would be lovely to be able to leave sets of equipment around the world, but not always feasible.
So you didn't manage to get New Zealand to be a sponsor or something like that to help you with your shipping costs?
At times, and our national airline was actually usually the better one to travel on. It's more knowing what you're getting into. So knowing that you're not going to get stung too much excess baggage. So you begin to learn which airlines to travel with, and Air New Zealand was usually one of the better ones. Yeah.
So what was the highlight of your competing experiences? So you've number one a couple of times, you went to the Olympics, obviously World Championships. What was the big memory or that was your favorite moment?
I think it's just the group of people that I enjoyed training and traveling with, particularly during the build up to the London Olympics, where I was fortunate enough to start working with Dorian van Rijsselberg and his coach at the time, who was Aaron McIntosh Kiwi. So I essentially embedded with the Dutch team, and we just lived and breathed Weymouth, which was where the Olympic venue was for the London Games, and became locals there. And I think it was just the experiences that you have with that group. The competition side of things, it's not that ultimately it's not that enjoyable. In the Olympic Games and things, there's so much going on, and such a pressure environment that the enjoyment side of it, yeah, you do your best to try and have as much fun as possible. But I would say it's more the traveling and training with friends. I'd say it's probably the highlights.
It's funny because you mentioned at the beginning of it, you started in a team sport, you went to a solo sport, and now you're talking about actually it's the team or the group, rather than team, the group environment you actually enjoy the most. It's it's interesting. You chose a solo sport, and yet it's the group environment that's the most fun bit of it. And when you say you kind of lived in Weymouth for a set period of time, I'm assuming you weren't allowed to work over there. So, and you're not professionals in the fact that you don't sort of earn high money as windsurfing as windsurfers. So how did you cope with that funding? Did you manage to get sponsorship, or did you have to kind of go right 2 hours in the morning is me working online, then I do training? How did you balance all that?
So I had a lot of support from sponsors back home, and also High Performance Sport and Yachting New Zealand were very good in that respect. But probably a lot of it for me was actually the Dutch team. So they had a great setup there. They had a house that was fully catered for, and I actually just lived within that team, within that group environment. So very lucky in that respect. So I mean, I think one year we spent 100 days of the year in Weymouth embedded. So with little trips out, because we're keen mountain bikers, and that was part of our training schedule. So we'd shoot off to Wales every now and then. So we really enjoyed that time that we spent there. But primarily being able to stay that long in Weymouth is yes, with the Dutchies, we're able to let that happen.
Oh, thank you, Holland, for supporting our Olympic bid there.
They got a little return on it. It all worked.
How important is it? I mean, so one of the things that's what one of the America's Cup teams have said is that they need to be here in the 5 weeks preparation per race course for the America's Cup. How important is it knowing those local waters and having that time in a place like Weymouth, for example, for a big regatta like that, to learn the local conditions? So I'm guessing you don't. And is it something that you learn over years by going back to the same regattas and learning the local conditions?
That's it. And sailing is such an experience-based sport. You know, there's the skill side and the physiological side, but there's also the decision-making side. And each different location and each different course area is exactly that. It presents a different set of challenges. So that is why typically that the sailing team spends so much time on site, just learning the subtleties, particularly around Olympic times, you know, because different times of the years they change things in terms of the weather patterns. But that is one of the fundamental aspects of sailing. You just got to know the wind and know the water, the currents, how the wind shifts off the land, and all those parts of the game is one of the fundamentals, if not the primary. And there's always that saying in sailing, it's better to be lucky than good. And what that means is basically that you have this invisible force that you're chasing around the ocean that can make you look pretty good at times or make you look really bad in the wind. So yeah, that is a critical aspect about spending time at the venues.
And has obviously with foiling, you've got less contact with the water. So is that reducing the impact of currents, or is that still a big part of it?
No, it's still a massive part of it. And funnily enough, on the foils, you begin to feel the turbulence in the water, a lot like an airplane actually. So at times you'll feel the vibration of the wings on the foil, like it's flapping, like there's actually turbulence through the water, which is a really interesting feeling. And that, you know, coming from windsurfing, where you're typically just relying on a fin and you're stuck to the water, you're banging around, but suddenly you can feel the turbulence through the different levels of the ocean, which is an amazing sensation.
Wow, that's and the so from a coaching point of view, because you've coached a lot of teams. How do you try and speed up that experience piece for young sailors as a coach? How do you go about trying to do that for those different courses?
This is kind of what we're starting on at the moment. So just starting a new initiative with Windfoil New Zealand, which is an entity which has been born here. I mean, the sport is essentially born here to begin in a lot of respects, and the team behind Windfoil New Zealand are instrumental in bringing foiling to the Olympic Games. So now we've got a little team of young guys and girls, and with support of Windfoil New Zealand and Yachting New Zealand, have actually just come on board now to help the project move forward. And it is that experience thing, but the issue that we face here is that we have to use, and particularly with this lockdown scenario, we have to use what we have and the skills and people that we have on the ground in New Zealand. It's going to be a little difficult to get this team offshore, but we believe that with the people that we have behind this current project, that we can fast track these young kids to the next level. We're lucky that a lot of them have actually haven't gone down the Olympic route, so to speak, at this point with the RSX, which was the outgoing Olympic class, because they were enjoying foiling too much. And it's actually worked out in a really good way, because we're already two years online with these young guys and girls. So now it is the time to put all that experience to work and find a way to fast track these kids. I mean, the first thing is just to make them fast enough. But then we've got to get them around the race course, and that's where the whole experience side comes in. So there are fundamentals that they need to learn starting, and what to look for in certain locations, and what you're looking for on land versus the wind and currents and things like this. So it is a process, but we're lucky enough to actually have the engagement of these young people, and also the support of some organisations helping us move the whole thing forward. So watch the space, I would say.
It sounds exciting. I mean, one of the shows that a lot of people will have watched has been The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and he talks a lot during those ones about how he deliberately puts pressure on players in training to try and recreate what they're going to feel when it comes to actual finals, and so he knows how they're going to react. Does it help having a number of people like yourself who have got experience? Can you get on the boards and put them under some sort of pressure situations that they would expect to get in more aggressive racing, or you're not at that stage yet to try and to do that kind of training, or you're not going to go down that route?
No, luckily enough, we are at that stage, and I guess this speaks again for the joy of foiling that Aaron and myself are also 2-3 years into this, so it's now a passion of ours. So even though we're a little older, we've still got all the tricks. So it is exactly that. So I compete national level, and I train with these guys a couple of days a week on the water, and then I'm also supporting them in a boat. So directly supporting them on the water another couple of days a week. So they begin to feel that the pressure, and I guess that you talk of, and also the minute details that we work in. And the other beauty of that is I can just jump on their equipment and have a quick tune up, and they can feel what equipment should feel like when it's completely balanced, when they jump on mine, if I've done a good job. So there is that respect that we're essentially player coaches in that level. So that's incredibly fortunate position that New Zealand is in.
Are you also, if you beat them, would you go to the Olympics? Would you be? Are you their competitor as well as their coach from that level?
I'm definitely a competitor, but I will leave the Olympics to these guys. And if I've done my job properly,
yep.
Then they'll be beating me, and they should be beating me. So if they're not beating me, then we're in trouble. So
right.
I'm staying fit, and I'm staying as fast as I can, and I'll use all my tricks. But in the next couple of years, if I've done my job right, then they'll be kicking my ass.
So it looks like, looking through your LinkedIn profile, you've coached the Brazilian team, the Korean team, the Finnish team. You've really travelled with your coaching around the world. How is your Finnish, Korean, and Portuguese? Do you learn the local languages while you're there?
I don't spend long enough. There's the Chinese in there as well. So probably the Chinese was the longest period I've had, and that's just a very recent one, and a very successful one. But now we're moving away from the current Olympic equipment. There's a lot of challenge for the Chinese to stay competitive on the new format, because it's very it requires a very different approach. So I have been busy with the coaching, and that was actually during my competitive career, particularly with the Finnish, and the Portuguese or the Brazilian was directly after I'd stopped competing myself. So very full, but probably in terms of languages, French, funnily enough, but it doesn't apply to any of them.
And so did you take coaching badges, or are you purely coaching on kind of from experience?
Primarily experience. I mean, sailing is an experience-based sport in that. So did you say coaching badges?
Yeah, sorry. In rugby, you have coaching badges, as in
right.
No,
training.
So I'm a level 3 or level 4. Sorry. Yeah.
And if you're any good, then someone else might hire you. If you're not, then that's probably the end of your career.
Right. Okay. So it's not as structured in that sense around it. one of the things that a lot of people say about top level sport is that it's in the top 2 inches, and that it's as much that a lot of the time skills based play people are very even, and it becomes actually it's the mental attitude rather than the skills piece. Are you looking? Do you have physical coaches or mental skills coaches for your Olympic pieces, or have you ever used a mental skills coach?
Yes, I have extensively in my career. So I guess there's a lot of you learn on the job. So there's a lot of tricks that you bring across. But it's been super interesting actually getting involved with all these different young upcoming athletes and how they all vary in that top 2 inches. And I'd say the longer your career, and I had a long career in the Olympic cycles. So you start to really learn the mental side and the mental game and how critical that becomes. So it's very interesting now sitting back and being able to watch these young athletes progress and how much they all differ. And you can see straight away the improvements that need to be made in those areas, or not. Some of them are already in great shape. So and how that is going to progress. So yeah, it's very interesting to be in a different scenario, I guess, in that I'm sitting back and watching, having experienced and gone through all those mental challenges through my own career.
I mean, it is interesting. You took someone like Michael Jordan. It's clear he loves winning. I remember listening to an interview with Richard Cockrell, in the rugby side. He's like, he hates losing. It's a different mentality. And then you got someone like John Kerwin, who during his whole career felt never. I mean, he's one of the guys that gets picked into in all-time best 15s, and yet he had imposter syndrome the whole way through his career, going, "I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough." It's different people have to be treated differently, don't they? And you've got to find out what their switches are. In some ways.
Absolutely, and you refer to the Jordan documentary, and it is a very interesting one. But at the same time, like this is one of the things that as a coach I actually need to back off a little bit, because as an athlete I was very intense, and winning was the number one priority. But that can scare a lot of people off and actually work against a lot of different athletes. It depends on how they on how they respond. So yeah, you need to figure out pretty quickly what they need and support them in that way. I mean, it may be a Jordan approach, or it may be very soft. Some people will quit on you if you go at them hard like that. And I guess that's a way of figuring out if they really want it or not. But at the same time, maybe they just need a different way, just to be looked at in a different way.
Yeah, that's what Jordan's way was clearly my way or the highway.
Very much.
Which was very much so. But then we've looked at Eddie Jones, when the first thing he did when he joined the England team was he put his arm around people like Mako Vunipola and said, "Hey, I want you to play like a Tongan." Whereas when he approached somebody like James Haskell, he would give him a protein shake each morning, going, "This is the shake that's going to make you better." And those different approaches to people who, I mean, they're all international sportsmen. They all want to be there. You say it's about finding. Yeah, if you push people the wrong way, they will. Yeah, they can quit if it's the wrong way. Now you're not a full-time coach, are you? You also run an electric bike company.
Yeah, it's very neglected, given that I'm always I spend too much time offshore. But this has just come about as one of the sports I compete in, stand-up paddleboarding. The designer of the stand-up paddleboards is a guy called Matt Razier, who then went on to develop an electric bike company, which I love the look of. So we experimented with the idea of bringing them to New Zealand, given that I just love the whole powered by nature in a way, because these bikes are able to be powered by the sun. They have a little solar charger and things like this. So and they're a lot different. They're just very different way of getting about town, and a very cool way to get about town. So yeah, it was just I'm always interested in different things, and I like the whole business side of life. So yeah, just looked into promoting these bikes in New Zealand.
Okay, so you're the importer of these ones. You're not. It's you're not actually building them yourselves.
The importer, yeah.
Yep.
So the designer of the pedal boards, they're based in Barcelona. So yeah, we have a little bit to do with them, but just the concept was I thought appropriate for New Zealand. Yeah.
So guys, check out Revolt Bike NZ. There's 4 different designs on there, including one that's with fat tires to go on the beach. So yeah, you can. What you need though is some sort of attachments people can clip in their surfboard. And
yes, we also have that.
You also have that. You do. Okay.
Yeah. So they're very much beach culture orientated. So yeah, you got to be able to take your surfboard there, and the logistics have actually just changed slightly. Partnered up with a team in Christchurch just to expand the range, and so there's a bit more full-time support on the ground when I'm offshore. So that should be rolling out pretty soon, and hopefully we'll see a few more bikes cruising about.
Now, you mentioned there, touched on that, your other sports, because whilst we've talked a lot about windsurfing, you also apparently qualified for New Zealand to represent New Zealand at the Triathlon World Championships, but unfortunately clashes meant you didn't go along. So, what other was your triathlon just purely about conditioning for surfing, or was that something, or just another passion?
It started off in that way, but so it's based around the Xterra triathlon. So I really enjoy nature. So biking became a big part of my conditioning off the water, and that evolved into mountain biking. And I always tend to find my way into nature at some point. And then the competitive side of me found Xterra, which was at that point the qualification was down in Rotorua, a place that I spend a lot of time. So I swam quite a bit back in the day, but I had to learn how to kind of go fast again. I run reasonably well and I mountain bike reasonably well. So it all came together, and for a couple of years there, I was qualified for the team to go away to Maui, and it always clashed with something on the main side of things. So wasn't able to go. But funnily enough, during lockdown, I got back into my biking pretty heavily, and now that passion has been reignited. So I've got some ideas, but we'll see.
And then you've stand-up paddleboarding. You've also represented New Zealand at the World Championships for that as well.
Yeah, again, so that was something that crossed over really well. Along the training side, that became actually a really pivotal part of my training at some point. But then again, you just become quite good, and then you can qualify for these things, and that one did fit. So that was a trip to Sayulita, Mexico, which is an amazing experience. So it's ISA, International Surfing Association. So we're over there with the surf team, Daniel Cariopa, and it's a completely different culture, just as focused, but in a very different, I guess, in a more relaxed way than you would say for sailing. But it was very nice to actually have a start time and start at that time. So which is not very common in sailing. Sometimes you can be just waiting the whole day and not even get a race. So it's very, very enjoyable team to travel with. But again, coming back to that whole individual sport, but team environment. So there's a theme developing here.
There is, isn't there? And yes, it's not that yachts people are lazy and don't turn up on time. It's the waiting for the wind. Before we just say that you don't say you had a start time and it actually starts. But with that paddleboarding, was that racing around a course, or was that the where you come in on waves and do tricks? Which type of paddleboarding were you doing?
So I was selected for the distance race. So that's you go out through surf, and then you race around a set course, which was brutal. I managed to eat a fish taco that wasn't quite right a couple of days earlier. So the 30 degrees heat became a little bit more intense. Dehydrated state, probably one of the hardest races I've done in my life, but enjoyable at the same time. But then you finish your race, and then you get to support your the rest of your team, the surfers, and watch the whole team unfold and do their thing.
So, folks, this is where we get the different mentality of people who are competitors to win. Is have just gone and said, look, I had food poisoning. I went out on the sea. I don't know if you actually were throwing up while you're out there, and you were dehydrated. But hey, it was still fun. I remember listening to a podcast someone saying, yeah, Grant Fox knew he was ready for the Rugby World Cup final because he was dry retching on the coach on the way there with nerves and things. That doesn't sound like fun to me at all. I'll be honest, as a non-competitive person. Or not in that kind of way, that how you push your body to do those sort of things and then say it's fun afterwards. Does it sort of make sense to you, or that kind of having food poisoning and?
Yeah, no, it does, and I just go back to how I qualified for the Olympic Games for London. There was a really tight battle with the reigning Olympic champion at the time, Tom Ashley, and a day before the start of racing in Perth, which was to be our final selection event, I managed to stand on a cobbler fish, and its poisonous spines broke off almost up touching my foot bone. The doctors wanted to operate, and that would have been the end of my Olympic dream. So I went to the hospital. I actually passed out in the hospital, just through the sheer pain. Managed to get this thing under control. I had a foot that was 3 times the size, and I was racing in 2 days. So you learn a lot about how to repair your body as quickly as possible. And I learned a lot about what a cobbler fish is as well, and how they operate and where to avoid them. So I managed to get through the World Championships, and it really only is testament to the time we spent in Perth and how much the condition we were in. Again, I go back to the team, which was Aaron and Dorian and Canadian guy Zach Blavzik. So how they helped me through it as well. But just going upwind in Perth conditions, which is rough, and your foot's in the foot strap and it's levering against the board, and then every wave is just smashing your foot. Those little bones are moving around in there, and you're just wincing in pain. But it's just something that you spent 4 years dealing with this. This little fish spine's not gonna stop me. And then subsequently, I managed to qualify, did well enough, finished 5th in the World Championships. Dorian won. So, we were in great shape. Came home, got operated on. And it still amazes me that, that I got through it with the state that my foot was in. So, and when you get the surgeon telling you that he sliced in one side of your foot and sliced in the bottom and passed a piece of material through and cleaned it like flossing the bones out of your foot, you begin to realize how serious it potentially was. But wow. It's just another story in the journey.
So on the nutrition side though, you say a fish taco was a poor choice, or was just a bad one there. How important did you take your nutrition, and when you're traveling, how difficult is it to maintain your correct nutrition to keep you in peak physical condition?
To be honest, Europe, it's actually pretty easy. I mean, the food is amazing. So France, Italy, Spain, food's not really hard. So in that respect, it's but this is the funny thing in coaching with my Chinese team, and how much they enjoy Chinese food. They don't like. I always was shaking my head at the fact that we'd be in Italy and be surrounded by beautiful salads and pizzas, and all they'd want to do is find a Chinese restaurant. But it's what you're also familiar with, and that's I realized pretty quickly to not force them into enjoying the local cuisine, because that's actually what they operated on the best. Hence why I guess their bodies are craving it, So they just want that certain style of eating.
Yeah.
Which I guess why we Kiwis are so lucky that we have exposure to a whole lot of different ranges of food. So we're quite happy eating a pizza or a pasta or a salad.
Yeah, you say, but around Europe it's relatively it's safe. I talked to some of the beach volleyball players who travel through sort of Vietnam and Cambodia and places where they have to be a bit more careful.
Yeah,
and
they little tricky.
They leave it until after the tournament before they try the local dishes, just in case.
Yeah,
and things like that. So we've talking about that, about sort of the cultures of the team, because you said the Chinese team, you had the Korean team, the Finnish team, the Brazilian team, and obviously you know the New Zealand team. What are the cultures like? We obviously we from outside we look into China and go authoritarian regime, very very strict with their athletes, and it's very prescribed. Whereas Brazil, we would expect them to be much more relaxed, individual flair, and give them more room to express themselves. Are those fair comparisons, or when you get up to that top level, is it fairly similar in sort of how strict and how much freedom people are given?
No, that is fair. That is absolutely fair. But the interesting thing is that they all find a way to peak, to get themselves to peak performance. So the Chinese, yes, very focused, very disciplined. But one of my main objectives with the Chinese team was actually to open them up a lot more. And so the athletes they're willing to do whatever it takes, and if that means learning to open up, that's amazing. It was more the administration that was probably a little more tricky, a little bit more set in their way. So you're constantly going against what they know, because with the Chinese in our sport, what they know is actually quite successful. But it was moving them through to that next level, and almost combining the best of both. So you go through all these different team environments, and you can take out little pieces, and you can create the perfect team. The Finnish, they're very precise. The Brazilians are very passionate and emotional. The Chinese train like nothing else. So if you could take little bits of everything, and the Koreans are somewhere in between. Little bits of all of those teams, and the Kiwis, we're our ingenuity. We're always looking to find a way to create an advantage. So you take all those little bits, and you can create a pretty strong package.
And and learn from each of those to bring to for your coaching as you develop, I guess. As well.
Yeah, I guess I've been lucky in that sense as well. But the interesting thing is that all these different teams, they all find a way to make it work.
Cool. So are there any other sports I've not touched on? Because we talked about paddleboarding, we've talked about the cross-terrain triathlons. Any other sports that you just have picked up and just happen to be good at? I mean, for those of us, because you seem to just pick it up and just go, oh, I got passionate about it, and suddenly I'm one of the best in New Zealand. Any others you've done that with?
No, not really. No, we're pretty much covered them off. But you're very much a product of your environment. You're a professional athlete. You spend a lot of time on your bike, so as a consequence, you get reasonably good at it. You run, so you get reasonably good at that. And then if you do have a passion for it, and you do enjoy it, and you have that competitive flow, then you find an outlet. So even though you become a multi-sporter essentially, so even though you're maybe not the best at each specific sport, you become very good at a bunch of them. So so I guess that's a lucky side of things. But the foiling is opening up another world in surf and wing and wind, and it's that's actually, to me, is the future for the ocean anyway. So it's just opening up. It's opening it up more than ever.
And it's I'm finding it fascinating how you've becoming. It sounds like you fell out of love a bit with the surfing, found another passion, got really into it, and now you're reigniting that passion for that surfing and getting right back into it again, which is fantastic to hear. Doing it. So with the team though, are you all based in one place, or are you spread around the country and you have to come together for various camps, or do you have a kind of a base where you all live pretty close to each other and for training? Is there a foil surfing center of excellence, as it were?
Well, at the moment, the base is Auckland and specifically Wakatiri. We're pretty lucky that a number of the athletes that we have on board are also with Defence Force, so they're based in Devonport with the Navy. We have another guy out at Whenuapai with the Air Force. So in that respect, there's been a nice synergy with what they're doing, which is pretty progressive in that they are encouraged to go out and be the best that they can be, and whatever pursuit that they are putting their minds to, as well as their day-to-day job. So we're trying to work a little bit more closely with the Defence Forces now, just see if there's something else we can build on that, similar to what's happening in Europe with, for example, the French. They'll be able to be professional athletes, but have that association with the Navy or the Air Force or the police, so that essentially it becomes their career, but they're allowed a lot more time to go and pursue their sporting goals. So yeah, but we have a few down the line. Tauranga is the hotspot for sailing, as we're seeing. And then they, down in Nelson, but it's trying to coordinate that group as much as possible. So the hub is essentially out of Wakatiri, and the Waitemata Harbour is giving us the playground we need.
For those people that don't know, in the gendarmerie in France, they have their own sort of semi-professional cycling team, etc. So yeah, there's been there's a very tight link there, you say, between those and the sports, and yeah, it would be interesting to see if we can get the New Zealand Defence Forces on board as well, and especially the Navy would suit your sports perfectly, I'd have thought.
Seems to make a lot of sense, and if we can start to pump a few more recruits into the Navy, I think it's a win-win. So that's a long-term project, but a lot of the athletes that I've competed against, particularly from the European countries, have all had that support, and also that career. So they're progressing. They're not just purely a one-sided athlete.
I guess, as you say, it makes them a more rounded person, and hence the old All Blacks adage of good people make good players. But also, you need a post-sports career as well, which you've gone into coaching. Tom Ashley, who you mentioned earlier, he's now the CEO of Canoe Racing. But yeah, you need something to do after, because you're not going to become a billionaire or a millionaire from foil surfing, unfortunately. You're going to have to build that career. So if we can team up with people like that, so they've got careers to go to after their sport, then that's got to be a good thing as well. Anything I've not touched on, or any that you'd like to talk about before? Because I think I've covered all my questions. Yeah,
no, I think we're covered.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time. It's been it's been fascinating, so folks, keep an eye out for all that foil surfing. Where can people find out more about foil surfing?
Windfoil NZ. Google search. Otherwise, maybe you could put a link in there. I'm not website off the top of my head. I don't know. I don't remember. I think it's windfoilnz.com or windfoil.
I'll find the link and put it down below. Also, you're on the socials, on the Facebook page and all that kind of stuff, or just the website?
Windfoil NZ, yeah, that's all over Facebook, all over Instagram, and then probably the best way for Auckland is to experience foiling, whether it be wing or wind, is to get to the lake with Alan McIntosh, and then the pathways open up from there if it's something that speaks to the person. So
cool. So yes, link down below. Don't forget to like our Facebook page, New Zealand Sports Radio, for more of these long form interviews, and also join us at 8 p.m. most nights for our shows where we talk about things like cricket, rugby league, all of that kind of stuff. Thank you very much for joining us, and also you can listen to us on the move on the podcast, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all of those, Spotify, all those wonderful places to search for New Zealand Sports Radio.